Recently, I had a rare opportunity. Ben Collins, who famously played the Stig on Top Gear, was visiting Atlanta Motorsports Park to promote the incredible Praga R1. I was invited to do a bit of filming and sit down with Ben to talk about his career.
By the way, can I just say,
Please.
I thought you were great in the art of racing in the rain. I don't know if you guys realize this, but I was just looking it up, and that's him. That's you. Or is that an act? Do you have an acting double? And is that your dog?
That is not
went with
me.
you? Right.
Very handsome guy. I'll take it as a compliment.
I'd take it. Grow your hair out and just give it a little bit of that, and you could be him.
I have never, ever felt so special.
There was one passage that I thought was really interesting in terms of kind of illustrating who you seem to be as a person. Jackie Stewart came to talk to you and give you a bit of a pep talk. He had seen you crash the day previous, I assume. And he told you that there's a fine line between brains and balls.
The whole risk management thing, I found it very difficult when I started racing, not because I think I'm in any way brave, I just had an absence of fear of crashing. And that's a problem because it means that you end up doing stuff that you really shouldn't do. I had no inhibition to, like I'd be sliding, sideways across the grass and throwing it up the inside of people, or trying to go around the outside of three cars at a 120-mile-an-hour corner. And literally, the way you might learn on a PlayStation how not to do it, I was doing it in real time on track. And it was only really when they ran out of chassis and willingness to fix the car, and they said, if you crash again, you're done. Then I had some fear, because now I was afraid they were going to take away, the opportunity. So that was a different type of thing. So like by the second year, I calmed down and was much more consistent, and I made it a goal to finish every single race. Then went up a level, so I was racing for Jackie Stewart. I was desperate to make a really strong impression, and I was leading that race. It was a winter series that was like a precursor to the main championship, and that was the drive I wanted to get. And I was battling for the lead at Donington with a driver who'd been in that car the whole season. It was my first time stepping up, and he was pretty wild, and I was uncompromising, and that's what happens. Two people who won't back out. It can end either like a perfect overtaking move, or you end up in the gravel. So when you watch Formula One, it's great at the moment. Watching someone like Verstappen. He's putting these big moves on, and it's all calculated. And rarely does he get it wrong into the situation where there's a collision. It's usually a clean pass. That's really what you're trying to get. So I had the pep talk from Jackie. I had to then start in 12th and battle through. And I just thought, whatever you do, you cannot crash in front of this man who's just given you the pep talk. But I'm not staying in 12th either. And I was always good at getting off the line quickly. So I jumped a few, and that's always the easiest way to take your first scalps, get through, and then it was a case of hunting down the leader, who had a pretty lead. So I was reeling him in, and I was in second, like right on Mark Hines' tail when they threw the red flags out, which was a shame, because I reckon I'd have had him. Anyway, Mark went on to great things and won the F3 championship, and been a friend of mine for some time, and we'd be rivals on the track, but he was always like a professor. He'd raced karts since he was very small. And the sort of risk management side, and sort of kind of like taking away parts of your personality that interfere with what you should be focused on. That's something that definitely I think the experienced guys from karting have got that advantage. But I'd like to think that that's fairly sunk in now.
You mentioned Max, and Max started in karting at age 4. I'm personally inspired by drivers who found success who started a little bit later. In the book, you talk about passing Paul Newman at the 24 Hours of Daytona. Paul famously didn't start racing until he was in his mid-40s. You got a little bit of a late start too. How old were you when you started driving?
First race was 19, but I was driving stuff when I was, from 10, 11, which I think was helpful, because I was on a quad bike sliding around on muddy fields and things. I was supposed to be working with the car, with the quad bike, but mostly I was just terrorizing it. And then, learned to drive when I was 16. I was, stupid on the road. Didn't think about risk taking. So, but the upside was I learned how to drive fast, and yeah, so it was something, but it's not the equivalent of being in a thoroughbred racing cart like this thing that can do 100 mile an hour in a couple of seconds, and really vying very, very close, and the tactics and the thinking ahead of what it's like crowding into first corners. So that was a bit of experience to be gained. The first couple of years, learned the hard way, and then it starts to sink in, and you get more of an idea of where things are going to go and how to anticipate.
You mentioned after you'd begun racing, you took a skid control course that was taught by a former wrestler who went by the nickname Nature Boy.
That's him. Ryan Svensson.
Is that something that you recommend to people? Is that because you kind of pointed that out as being something that was really crucial?
It was because I was pretty wild, and I was going to be spinning a lot. And anyone that goes out racing for the first time, you will spin, and if you're not, you're probably not trying hard enough. So you're going to make mistakes. And the skid car, the benefit of that is you're honing your instincts, so you understand how to apply the opposite lock. And in my case, learn how to pirouette and, like a ballerina, to spin your head in the direction you want to go. And the trick is to always try and keep your eyes on the direction you want to be going in, and your hands will tend to follow your eyes. So if you start staring at the tree, you're probably going to steer into the tree. That was useful. I'm not sure that they even do that course anymore, partly because the skid frames, they're really only meant to do max sort of 45 miles an hour. We were sliding them around at 65 because my instructor was a madman. But there's other ways of learning car control. There's drifting. You can get in like some of the Westfield's caterhams, those sort of stuff. The thing is, though, almost anything that's gaining experience and seat time is going to help you some way, shape, or form. So I just get as much seat time as you can.
One thing that really stood out to me about your story of being the Stig on Top Gear was the superhero aspect. A couple of times you mentioned Superman and Clark Kent. And what sort of struck me and what it made me think about is that the Stig definitely was presented as a superhero, as the best driver in the world. But the driving that you were doing, the laps that you did, and even teaching the celebrities and the reasonably priced cars, that was all authentic.
Yeah, I mean, the Stig definitely, the character is a superhero. I am definitely not. And as Jackie Stewart can attest, so, I make, like all human beings, you make mistakes, and you're always working out, every time you go out, learning something more. The Stig character, though, was all about perfection, the ultimate driver. So that's a big reputation to live up to. And that was my job, was to try to live up to that role. And it was fun. And you put the suit on, and you did, there was an energy in it, not without getting silly and voodoo, but, you try and take on that role, and wearing the outfit, the helmet and all that stuff. You walk to a car, open the door, you see a reflection, it's not your own, and you see the stormtrooper looking back at you, and you're like, yeah, let's do this. And so I love that. And those, I wished we'd done more racing. We got to do the 24 hours of brick car in a diesel BMW. I did most of the hours of that race, especially in the night during the fog, which worked out quite well. We caught up some places and stuff. But it was mostly one car on a track and trying to do perfect laps. So it was more like qualifying laps. But you're right, it's real. And if you don't measure up, then the times aren't valid. And I was put to the test. We had the reasonably priced car, the poor old Suzuki. They had the Formula One drivers that came in, and I had to measure up to those times for real. So it was really fun. But yeah, the competitive element was definitely part of it.
There were, at one point in its heyday, literally hundreds of millions of people watching the show and seeing you as the best driver in the world. And yet you had to remain anonymous. Looking back, and I think we all kind of know, especially watching things like Drive to Survive, how cutthroat the world of racing was. How do you feel now, remembering that sort of combination of fame and anonymity at a time where if you had been known to be Ben Collins, it might have gotten you more drives?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I was very happy because I didn't want to be on camera at all. So this was great. Could hide behind a helmet and get all the benefits of being on a really cool show and doing cool stuff. Would it have helped? Potentially, it would have. I mean, the bit I was pushing for from the very first time I wrote in to get the job and get considered for it was to go racing with that character. And that would have been epic, and that nearly happened. And it was actually, it was killer because there was a program we were working towards to go and race at Le Mans in the LMP category, which I've been racing in, and they were, it was one of those things where they were looking for a driver with budget to come and pay for it, and I didn't have that. I was going for drives that would have a salary and a way to keep a living. So that was quite tough to see that really there wasn't really much intention to take that route, but that wasn't the nature of the program. And I accepted it for the cool job that it was. But you never knew, there was never really a huge amount of security. So it was, always a short contract, same as racing. You're only as good as your last race. If you're not up to expectation, you're not performing, you're out. Even if you are doing well, you could win a championship, and I've had that before. And the teams stop racing, or the sponsor does something different, and it's musical chairs. You've got to be ready for the next thing. So I think a lot of drivers realise you have to keep your options open. Have more than one job is always a good idea. And the Top Gear work was great because it was a good bolster to the racing, which I was doing at the same time. And then I got into movies as well, so got to work on some Hollywood productions, which are epic. So yeah, it was good. It was good to have a really varied experience, but each piece was super focused. And the Top Gear time was amazing.
I'm a huge Daniel Craig series fan. I loved all those movies, and Quantum of Solace opens with a really epic sort of Aston Martin versus Alfa Romeo chase scene.
Yeah, I huge Bond fan, still am. I love it. It's just what an amazing series. And Daniel's an awesome guy. He's he's hilariously funny. He's just got a really great sense of humour, and it was an amazing Bond. I think seeing his time come to an end, it's quite gut wrenching. But then Bond is known for being reinvented, but I think the way he carried it was awesome. And from Casino Royale, with that for me, one of the memorable things is that crazy fight in the with his first kill as a 00. That had to translate into a car chase, and that was my opportunity to come in. So I've been racing 200-mile-an-hour Le Mans cars. They had a high-speed car chase, and so it was incredible to be asked in by the stunt coordinator Gary Powell, who was sort of come through the films as a stuntman and then a coordinator on the Bourne movies. So that was the mission, and we had 12 Astons. I was in one, doing some scenes in that, and cars just got wrecked. Intentionally, the door got ripped off. It was getting shot, and just terrorizing this thing. But the car was actually pretty bulletproof. And I loved the DBS. It was sort of, I think it was sort of like a pivotal moment for Aston Martin. They'd gone through years of development, great power, super durable, and it was kind of perfect for slamming around the mountainside around Lake Garda, but which was pretty twitchy because it really, really tight roads with a really thin wall separating you from the lake, and you couldn't make any mistakes. But I loved it. It was a really amazing experience. The scale of movies, we got Top Gear, small crews. Sometimes it'd be like 5 of us doing something, and the guys were amazing at knowing exactly what shots they were meant to get, thinking ahead to what the editor would want. Movies, you've got 250 people or something in a mountain, all the different departments, camera teams, everything has to be perfect, the weather has to be perfect, and they're all coming down to this sort of one timeless shot. So it's almost like a qualifying mentality where you want to make sure everything is just right, and you've seen everything that you're supposed to understand before it comes at you very quickly.
The media landscape has changed a little bit since the days of Top Gear. We've got a Praga R1 behind us, and you're here at Atlanta Motorsports Park with Praga.
I've been racing these for 2 years in the One Make series, as well as in we did 24 Hours of Zolder last year, and they are just so much fun. But it's always great being in a different track. So to come here to Atlanta and let rip in that, it's going to be amazing. But yeah, it's the perfect car for the job.
I found out about the Praga R1 because I watch Jimmy Broadbent on YouTube, and he's a sim racer on YouTube who transitioned into real cars, and he got a ride as the amateur in an amateur pro pair, and they won a championship.
I was competing with Jimmy. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. So Jimmy's great. It's amazing seeing that was the whole point of that series. Similar to Le Mans, you've got a mix of different abilities. So Jimmy's learning curve was pretty steep, and it was great. He worked very hard He had a great co-driver with Gordy Much, who worked extremely hard with him to help him with his skills, look at the data, learn from everything. And the great thing is we get data stream from these, plus cameras are built into the car, so you can review everything you do, play it back, compare it with your teammates, and it's really the fastest way to learn. And the old days of racing before data, you just guessed, what gear is somebody using. Now you know exactly where they brake, you know exactly where they pick up the throttle. You can see very precisely what mistakes you've made and where to improve. So yeah, he took to that really well. I think just because you've done a lot of sim racing, you might know where the track goes, but it's still there's a different feeling. You can't recreate gravity, even if you've got a motion rig. All that can do is really give you a sense of weight transfer, but you can't simulate gravity. But yeah, they were really good. They had a very consistent run through the year. They were really strong pairing because Gordy's fast, Jimmy was pretty close. So we had some good battles with them. Had some fun, with Gordy. So with our car, I think we had a few fastest laps for pole in the season, and we nearly won a race. We got a couple of podiums with me and Jay driving, but they deserved their win for sure. It was good on them, and it was tough racing. There was we had a lot of crews out there with very fast, experienced drivers and good amateurs. So there was nothing given.
You said in the book, and this was more than 10 years ago now, that your career to that point had never been a straight line. In the time that's passed since then, has the line straightened out at all, or is it still surprising you?
It's very surprising. So from this incredible position, working on a TV show that won awards for its content as well as how it's shot, it's beautifully shot and beautifully edited and graded and all those things. Movies like Bond that are just they're sort of spot on, and then quietly not realizing that the world of YouTube was completely taking off, and that is where it's at. And so I've finally realized that's where it's happening, and that's where the creativity's gone. So I finally started my own channel. So I'm at Ben Collins Drives, and I'm loving it. It's great. I thought that it was all about TV. No, it's all happening on the web, and getting to review all the latest cars, turn up and shoot stuff like what we're going to do with the R1 here. And so that took me by surprise, and I hadn't realized that the audience has just grown exponentially. I think since 2010-ish, it's really taken off and created great opportunities. So that's the future. But it was a surprise.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Ben. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to be going out on track with Ben, and I'm going to link to that video right about here.